But Neena's personal journey is one of overcoming abuse, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, divorce, and poverty. And she chronicled all of that into her autobiography called Hit Me With Your Best Shot.
Mm.
And she's also shaped that into a resilient and faith-based driven coaching business. She's an amazing entrepreneur. And you know what? Enough of me. I'm going to just bring on my guest, Neena Perez. Welcome to the show. Alrighty, it is time to stop hitting snooze and awaken to a life worth being. The fun and inspiring podcast that dives deep into what makes life truly fulfilling. I'm your host, Sue Willoughby, a self-proclaimed badass transformational life coach for women over 40. Join me as I explore the extraordinary journeys of ordinary people who've transformed their lives from the inside out. Tune in weekly to uncover the secrets to smashing through your perceived limits and creating a life that's not just well lived, but totally worth being. All right, I have a very special treat for you today. I got to tell you, I met this woman about a month ago. I was on her podcast, and her podcast is called Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. And I will tell you, her podcast is fire, everybody. It is fire. And she has this incredible, infectious energy that just, I will try and match it today. But as we were talking before, my guest today is Neena Perez, and she is a transformational coach. She's an author, a motivational speaker, and the host, as I said, of her own podcast, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. She is an entrepreneur, and she gets the best guests. I'm
Yes,
not
I
being
do.
biased there, but but her guests are amazing, and they also bring it. So her podcast will be in the show notes for sure, but you really have to check it out. It just, every time I listen to it, I get so much from it, and the energy and the positivity and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, I can't say enough good things about her podcast. But Neena's personal journey is one of overcoming abuse, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, divorce, and poverty. And she chronicled all of that into her autobiography called Hit Me With Your Best Shot.
Mm.
And she's also shaped that into a resilient and faith-based driven coaching business. She's an amazing entrepreneur. And you know what? Enough of me. I'm going to just bring on my guest, Neena Perez. Welcome to the show.
I am so stoked to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Neena, you've been through a lot in your life, and it's, you're just, like I said, I'm not kidding about your energy. It's very positive, and it's infectious. So tell us how you were able to, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you were able to transform all of that into the amazing entrepreneur and coach that you are today.
Yeah, it's a long journey, right? I think we all have like these long journeys. We don't really know how exactly we get there, but the pieces.
Yeah.
And life was tough. It was tough. I mean, I was, molested as a child at, starting around 6 years old. And then, I got into a relationship as a teen, got a baby at 15, and was nearly murdered by my son's father. He put a gun to my head. He pulled the trigger, but the safety got jammed on the gun. And that's why I'm sitting here today. And I contribute that now to my faith. I believe in God.
Yeah.
But, growing up was really, really tough. And, being told you're not wanted and nobody wants you and you'll never amount to anything. And you got, hello?
Hey.
Oh, for some reason you got like blanked out of my screen. Sorry about that. And so, it was a tough journey. And for a long time, Sue, I was a victim. I had a mentality of a victim. I was a go-getter, don't get me wrong. Like I had to take care of my kid, right? I had to take care of my kid. So I worked 2 jobs. I went to school to finish high school because I didn't want my kid to have an excuse not to finish. And then I got into a relationship at 21 years old, had a kid at 21, and got divorced like I think it was like 7 or 8 years later. It was a toxic marriage. But what happened was, is like, as I'm going through my journey and I'm growing up and I'm getting more mature and I'm going through therapy and things like that. And I realized, I can't be a victim anymore. Like, something has to change. I can't keep struggling all the time and being in shelters because I was living, in a battered women's shelter when my son's father tried to kill me. And then, being a single mom and just being in poverty all the time and struggling. I always worked, never not worked, but always in struggle. And I
Yeah.
just remember just saying, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they're saying, like, you're sick and tired. You're going to be sick and tired until you're sick and tired, then you'll get well. Right. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
happened. I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And then I got well. And so what happened was, is I finally just really just took a dive into my faith, my belief system. I took a dive into looking at my life because I had to take ownership. Like, I couldn't keep blaming my stepfather for abusing me, my son's father for trying to kill me, my ex-husband for being a pathological liar. Like, when was that going to stop, Sue? Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just started to say, you know what? I am going to take ownership of my life. It sucks because I didn't want to take ownership of my life. Because one of the things that I realized is the day that I remember clearly, the day I gave up being depressed. I used to have a lot of depression and anxiety and all that. And I remember the day I sat there, I was crying and everything. And then I just kind of woke up and I said, you know what? I choose today to no longer be depressed or have anxiety. I said, I'm giving it to you, God. Here you go. It's all yours. I'm done. But you know what was funny, Sue, is that I didn't know who I was without it. I didn't know
Mm.
who I was. Then I had to go through the self discovery thing. Who am I? Like, without
Yeah.
being depressed, without being anxious, without being, having anxiety, without being angry all the time and victimized all the time. Who the heck am I? And that's when that journey started. So it's a long journey. And in 2018, I decided to go through a very cathartic experience. And I wrote my book, Hit Me With Your Best Shot. And I wrote it all down. And I knew that the minute I would press publish, I was going to lose family members, possibly
Mm.
even my mother, because she wasn't the best mother. She is now, but she wasn't then. And, but I decided, do I want to help people or make my family happy? And I decided I wanted to help people. So I clicked publish. And then my mother found out and she didn't speak to me for like 8 months. And my family criticized me and the secrets just stay in the house type of thing.
Right.
And I exposed all of it. And that was a no-no. But that
Wow.
was my journey. And then that's when I realized that book had impacted so many women. And it started to go into book clubs and people were coming to me to let me know all of their abuse and what they've been through. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. So I went back to school, became an NLP master practitioner, got my life coaching degree, positive intelligence degree, like all this stuff, neuroscience. Like, I got into all of it, and then I just became the coach I am today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah, I think that being in those situations and like you said, being afraid to hit that publish button, like, do I tell my story? Because it is your
Mm-hmm.
story.
Mm-hmm.
And how is it going to land with everybody else? It doesn't matter,
Doesn't
right?
matter.
I mean, because it's your story. It's what happened to you. And
Right.
yes, sure, the people around you are like, no, thank you. Please don't, because it's going to
Right.
be a reflection on us. So that's really brave. I
Yeah.
mean, that was a
Yeah.
huge, huge step for you. And when you made that decision to hit publish and then go back to school, I mean, here you are, you've got kids, you're, holding down jobs, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
school. Um, how did you stay positive through all
Mm.
of that and keep moving forward?
Well, thankfully, I'm remarried. And so my husband was so supportive. It was a definitely yin and yang from my last marriage. This spouse was actually very supportive. And, I went back to school in my 30s. I'm 52 now, but I went back to school in my 30s and we lost everything. So we lost our house, our cars. We were homeless for about a year. And so we lived in, friends' living rooms, on couches, wherever we could land our heads. But he was still very supportive. And I was an entrepreneur, so I was going to school full time. But I had my cooking business because I went back to school to be a chef before I got into all the coaching
Wow.
stuff. Yeah, and I thrived in that. I became a director of operations, and I became a six-figure earner and like a chef, well known. And I had a lot of little awards granted and all that. So it was great. But how did I stay positive? As like, for me, faith is huge, right? So I kept my eyes on God instead of my problems, because I was, feeling like I was down spiraling, losing your home and losing your cars and having to put your kids in other family members' homes so they don't sleep in the car with you. Like that kind of stuff was tough. And I was like, I just remember one day, like screaming up to God, and I'm like, this is unfair. This is unfair. What's going on here? Why is this happening to me? And almost like an impression, almost like an audible voice I heard say, I told you to be obedient. I didn't tell you it would be easy. And as soon as I heard that, I corrected my steps and I kept going forward. And I ended up being the valedictorian of the school. I graduated with a 4.2 or 4.5 GPA. I had all these remarks. I had a full scholarship ride now onto my bachelor's degree, because this was my associate's degree. I had a full ride to my bachelor's degree, left college without one dime of owed money.
Nice.
And I graduated there with a, 4.0 or whatever it was, and went on to my career. And in the meantime, also becoming a spiritual coach and leader and leading women and seeing the breakthrough in their lives and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's how you stay positive. You keep one day at a time, one moment at a time. Because if I keep looking back, I'm never going to go forward. And if I was looking too forward, I would feel depressed, because how am I going to get there?
Mhm.
Especially if
Yeah.
you're homeless or you're struggling or you have financial issues, like it's hard. So one day at a time, one moment at a time. That's all I did every single day until I got there.
Yeah. That is so important. And I love that
Yeah.
you said that, when you can't go back, you can't look behind you, because if you do,
Mm-mm.
it'll pull you back.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, when you set your sights too far in the future, um, you have to have something that you're moving forward to. But
Right.
sometimes the future, and I noticed this with clients too, that when they have this thing that they want to do, it becomes so big and overwhelming that they're like, I don't want to, I'm
Yeah.
just going to stay right
Yeah.
here. So I think that that's really important to remember. Just take it one step at a time, one day at a time,
Yeah.
one challenge at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's an impressive story. I didn't even know about the cooking and the
Yeah.
becoming a chef, because I'll tell you, that is hard work.
It is hard work, and I did it for 20 years. And I started as a dishwasher and quickly became a culinary instructor, and then worked at Jean Georges restaurants, and then, actually helped this organization build and launch their restaurant business. And I did that for 8 years and became a director of culinary. So yeah, that became a big thing. And that actually, a lot of those skills is what I use in my coaching business, because you have to do mise en place, which means getting everything ready. You have to know a recipe for how to get to where you're going, and then you have your main dish. So yeah, it's all a part of it, right? It's leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that what you modeled your three-step program on?
I didn't,
Okay.
but lately it's been coming up again. Like every time I notice, because I'm a chef by trade, right? So everything I do is like, oh wait, let's get our mise en place ready. Let's get our stuff together. So it's more like a private thing that I do. But
Yeah.
the 3-step process happened because I realized that we cannot build a very successful business without dealing with some inner stuff. You have
Mhm.
got to deal with inner healing. So that's where that came from, because I thought about my journey. How did I become a six-figure earner and coach? Like, how did that happen? Well, it
Yeah.
happened with a lot of like inner work, a lot of inner work, and then transcending that. So defining my core values, defining where I wanted to go. Where's my gaps from here to where I want to go? Like setting my goals. How do I accomplish the next goal, type of thing? And then I said, Sue, one of the things that was missing, at least for me, was that a lot of the coaching programs I've done, and I've spent thousands on coaching programs, is that they would each give me maybe a piece of something,
Mm.
you know, But what I wanted to do was have the women who came to have an entire model that they can go to. So they can actually go through transitioning through the inner healing, transcending, and then co-creation. And
Mm.
co-creation means it's you, me, and the team and God working together, and we build your framework, your marketing, your automation, your curriculum, the whole thing. So you come to me from concept to launch because I wanted the woman to come and go through the whole journey without having to spend with this one a little bit, with that one a little bit, this one a little bit, That's what I
Yeah.
did. So I built the machine. I built the machine I was looking for.
Ah, that's great. Yes, yes, you are the coach that you wish you had.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And I love the full circle thing. That I think that is incredible, because you're right. It is, and there's so many things out there that are being tossed at
Yeah.
us, right? Like the new this, the AI that, the whatever that,
Yes.
and it's overwhelming. And
It's
for someone
overwhelming.
who is coming from maybe a traditional corporate job or whatever, and they want to go into the entrepreneurial space, or they're starting from scratch, and what do you do? I mean, it is
Right. Right.
overwhelming. So I
It
love
is.
that you take the overwhelm. It sounds like take the overwhelm out of it.
Yeah,
And
it's important.
yeah, and the inner work is so important. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you said that, because if you want to make any change in your life, as people are like, well, I do this and it's still that, or I meet this person and it's not a right fit. I'm like, well, what's the common denominator here, right? The common
Mhm, mhm,
denominator is always you.
mhm.
It's always you, Nina, right? You're the common denominator. Nothing's going to change unless you change you,
Yeah, yeah.
unless
And it's
you
the
evolve.
emotion. It's the emotion
Yeah.
you add to something, right? Because at the end of the day, things just are. They just
Yeah.
are,
Yep.
right? And so are they crappy? Are they good? I don't know. You tell me, because
Hmm.
somebody can look at this situation and look at it as what a crappy situation. And
Hmm.
somebody else can look at it and say, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's a breeze, right?
Right.
So it's literally what we bring to the table in our own, because we have our own maps. We get to the world on our own journeys and our own places, right? We get to this place, but it is your own view on things. So I always tell ladies like, oh, I just can't do it because it's so messed up. I said, what, compared to what though?
Hmm.
Compared to what? And they're like, oh, well, everything is wrong. Everything. Okay, let's break down everything. You know, because we tend to use words that are against us actually, because your brain doesn't know the difference. It's not sarcastic. Your subconscious is not sarcastic. So what you say, it literally thinks that's what you mean. So when
Hmm.
everything is wrong, what happens? Overwhelm,
Hmm.
frustration, anger, disappointment, like all these things start because everything is wrong. Meanwhile, it's one thing, like something at work didn't work. The
Yeah.
printer went out of whack, whatever. It's
Right.
everything. I should have just not woke up today. You know?
Yeah. No, and you're right that we
Yeah.
do that. You spill your coffee in the morning and you're like, my whole day is ruined.
Right.
And you just wipe it up and pour another
Yeah.
cup. It's
Yeah,
don't be crazy.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you're
It's
that's so funny.
generalization, right? Because we
Yeah.
see something and our brain has to generalize. Otherwise, we'd go crazy, literally. Because if you think about it, you and I are speaking,
Mhm.
but are we thinking about the tones of our voice, or the air conditioning that just kicked on, or the cars outside? Or if our brain had to think of every little thing, we would go crazy. So it has to generalize, right? And that's why we do everything or always or, all those words, because we got to just get to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, get to the point. And I don't know if when you say when we do generalize, it also when we do, it makes it easier on us, because then that
Yeah.
way we don't have to look at that one thing that that one
Exactly.
thing that's us, definitely. It's like, well,
Right.
everything is bad, everything is wrong.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that goes along with what you were talking about, being in that victim mentality.
Yeah.
Nothing ever
Yeah.
goes right for me.
Right.
Everything I'm dealt is bad, or, every job that I've had is horrible. And, my life is just in shambles. And yes, of course, if that's the way you're seeing things, then,
Exactly. You're
you're
right. You're
what you
absolutely right.
focus on, right? That we
Right.
say what you
Exactly.
focus on
Yeah. Right.
grows. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the red car syndrome, right? Like you go in,
Mhm.
you decided you want to buy a red car, and now
Yep.
everybody and their mother's driving a red car, right? And it's not even
Exactly.
because they're driving a red car, it's because you've noticed it. That's your focus.
Yep.
And so I always tell people, like, when, especially my ladies, like if they're starting to get overwhelmed, like, I'm overwhelmed. You are? Hey, what's in your room that's yellow? They're like, what? Yellow? And they're like looking around for yellow, but it takes them out of that I'm overwhelmed right now. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because if you're focused on something else, you'll realize quickly that you're just not overwhelmed. You've told yourself you're overwhelmed,
Hmm.
So shift. I call it squirrel. You're like, squirrel, squirrel.
Totally. That's me all the way. Squirrel,
Yeah.
squirrel, squirrel,
Right.
squirrel. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
I do have a bad case of the pretty shiny thing syndrome, I call it.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Me as well.
so when someone comes to you, who do you serve? I know you serve women
Yeah. I
primarily.
serve purpose driven women, meaning women that
Mhm.
really are aspiring to be entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So then they want to either transition or have a side gig into entrepreneurship as coaches. And so I help them utilize their wisdom for wealth. And so they're seeking guidance in like mindset, branding, marketing, operational strategies, things like that. And so we help them build a business that aligns with their values, their coaching business. Yeah.
I like that wisdom for wealth.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. Because when they come into the program, and the inner work stuff and the transcending stuff, we do that sometimes in the group coaching calls, but I also have a full academy that has all of these lessons and workbooks and all that kind of stuff that they can do at their own pace, and they get access to that for life. So they can go to it whenever they want. The co-creation part is where we turn their wisdom into wealth. So in that area, we start to talk about their foundations, right? Like, what's
Mhm.
going on here? What's your wisdom? What's your God-given talents? What's your giftings? What's your skill sets? It's a long spreadsheet, and we spend a lot of time on it. And but that is where we start to fine tuning their wisdom into wealth. When we start to build out, I call it a 3-level ICC, which is an ideal core client. And we
Mm.
start leveling that ideal core client into 3 levels. And so who they are when the woman they want to speak to, maybe in the beginning stages, or men in the beginning stages, who they are in the middle, and who is the one maybe who is already an expert and they want to speak to them. So we do a lot of levels, and we start talking about that. We start really taking all of that wisdom that they have and translating that into a thriving coaching business so that they can turn their wisdom into wealth. So it's a multi-step process, and they're with me for a year. Now, can we build this out within 90 days? Yes, absolutely. And that's not a problem. We could do that, but they still are with me for the year. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is for all of the mindset stuff that's going to come, right? All of the kinks that comes in a program. Maybe they want to strategize on something different and new. I stay with them for a year on purpose because I've been left behind, and I'm not going
Mm.
to leave any woman behind. It's just not going to happen. Not on my
Yeah.
watch. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Not on my watch.
That's right.
So and I want to go back to the wealth thing.
Sure.
How do you find women and money? And I'm trying to do you find that women have issues around charging for their worth?
Oh, 100%, right? I think
Mhm.
it's
Why is that?
they immediately go to this imposter syndrome. They
Mm.
immediately don't think they're worth it. And so we have to work on that. And so what I do is I'm like, well, what's the transformation that you're trying to deliver here? Oh, I
Mhm.
want this. Do you think that's valuable to this person's life? Yeah, of course. Oh, is it? Because what you're charging is not showing them any value, you know?
Mm.
And so I use an example of when I first started my a chefing, and I used to have a business called the Kitty Kitchen. I remember doing a study where I had all of these affluent women come to this event, and I had to present the business that I was doing, the model, because I wanted those were my target audience, was the affluent parents for these kids, right? And so I remember giving them this whole entire thing. I gave them each a package. I let them see all of the stuff I was doing. And the women are like, well, this is amazing, but we wouldn't hire you. And I'm
Hmm.
like, huh, you wouldn't
Uh,
hire me. That's awesome. Why?
yeah, right?
Because that's what I want to know. I want to know the
Yeah.
bad stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, because you're too cheap. You're too inexpensive.
Mm.
I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, you need to triple your price, triple my prices, And I'm like, I need to triple my prices. And they're like, absolutely. Because what you're offering at the amount of stuff that you're offering me, and you're only charging me this, that tells
Mhm.
me I'm going to get cheap. I'm going to get something that is not worth it, or you're actually not giving me what you're telling me you're giving me. That changed the game for me,
Mm.
because that was such a beautiful focus group that was so valuable to me. And so I was like, okay, so if I charged $1,000 or $1,200 for these kids cooking classes, they're like 100% would take it.
Sign
There
here.
you go. Exactly. No, that's what happened. I actually did. I booked them, right?
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
that big price point. And the amazing thing was that I would leave those parties and they would be giving me $500-$600 tips for a 2-hour cooking party. Okay. But that's because that's the client I wanted. You
Mhm.
see, I was
Mhm.
charging a client I didn't want, a client that couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yep.
you have to like start thinking affluently yourself. And you have to say to yourself, where is it actually that I want to live? Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to do low ticket prices. That's fine. You could do low
Mhm.
ticket prices. Just understand that that's what you're going to get is low ticket prices and
Yep.
a lot of tire kickers. Right. And
Yep.
so when we build out their funnel, that's one of the things we do is like they land on the landing page. They have to sign in to get your masterclass video that we do for them. And then they have a whole form that they can fill out, if they're interested in working with you. By the time they get to you, you'll know if they're tire kickers or if they want to work with you.
Yeah.
So we cut out the shenanigans. We cut out the middleman. Before it was like, oh, just take any call. And in the beginning, that's a good strategy because it'll get you used to your sales call. It'll get you comfortable with staying with your prices. And you can also start a little bit, not cheap, but lower. And then the next client, I want you to push that up about 10%, you know,
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
there's no pushback, you're too low. Let's push that up again.
Right.
You
That's
know?
a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're too
Yeah.
low. If somebody goes, okay, great. Okay, that's too low. Right? Because
Mhm.
even I charge a really good price. I charge a substantial price and people still like, okay,
Yeah.
so that
And you're
means
like,
I'm still too low.
"Mm."
That
Yeah.
means I'm still too low. And that's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Mhm.
You want to work with the right people. And this is the thing. Like if you are trying to be everything, right? That saying you want to be everything to everybody, you're quickly going to become nothing to nobody. And I've spoken to women who are like, oh, I have my own coaching business. Great. Who do you speak to? Well, everybody. Who's everybody? Well, everybody for
Nobody.
mindset. I'm like, so then how many clients do you have? Crickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Because you're not even niching it down. Like you're just saying mindset. And there's about what, maybe a million coaches out there saying that they do mindset work.
Mhm.
What differentiates you? What makes you different? Why are you doing this? And until you find that, you're going to constantly be in a struggle. And that's a not nice place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. I think it's really
absolutely.
important for women to hear that because I see it all the time. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you don't wanna pay that? You don't wanna pay $500? Okay, well, all right, how about $100? Will that be okay with you?"
Yeah,
Stop
don't do that.
apologizing for
Nope,
yourself.
do not do that. And be matter of fact too, right, Sue?
Yeah.
Like, this is my price.
Yep.
Pause. Do not
Mhm.
give them any more words. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
and don't
saying?
make it
This
sound
is
like a
my, yeah.
question.
Yeah, unless it's right, but just like pause. Like
Mhm.
stop thinking, oh, it's 15,000. Oh, and if you join today, no, it's 15,000. Oh, now let them ask a question.
Mhm.
Okay. If they're interested, they're going to ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you answer them honestly. But if you start to waver, well, I mean, it was this price, but today I can probably do this. And what if you're all automatically setting them up to have that feeling like they can't trust you.
Mhm.
You have got to stand firm in who you are. And you also have to ask yourself, when you look at your program, would you pay for that? If
Mhm.
somebody was actually offering you that exact same freedom of the reason why you created this coaching business. If you created this coaching business, you created it to set people free from whatever that pain point is. So if you were in that pain, would you pay for that? And
Mhm.
you got to be honest with yourself, right? If you're not going to show up for them, then don't charge that, because you're going to have to show up, right, Sue? You're a coach too. You have got
Yeah.
to show up. You
Yeah.
can't just like take people's money, and this is what unfortunately was happening with our industry. People come sometimes take your money and then they give you nothing that they said they were going to give you, or they, don't show up, or they come whenever. Don't be that person. And I don't work with
Mhm.
coaches like that, because as soon as you
Yeah.
tell me it's about the money, you're not in my program. I can't work with you.
Yeah.
Period. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that is all very, very, very valuable information for anybody who's thinking about going into the coaching field, because it's you do have to have that confidence, because if you feel like you have something that you can help someone else overcome,
Yep.
then you have to be confident enough to say, and this is why it's valuable, and I value my time, I value your time, and yeah, and this is what the price is.
Yeah. And the women that come to me aren't full of confidence, but they do have skill sets and they do have
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
And so they're not always full of confidence. Like sometimes they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, why don't we break this down? And that's why I do the foundation work, right? The mise en place, as I call it, the foundations.
Right.
Because when we're going to look at it, you're going to see, oh, wow, I actually have a lot of skills, like a lot of skills,
Right?
and we don't know that because imposter syndrome comes in and we don't feel good enough. And do I really know what I'm doing? And listen, somebody paid you money to do what it is you do for them.
Mhm.
So yes, you are worth it, period.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And secondly, you don't need to know it all. Let us help you with that, because that's another thing as coaches is we don't realize we're not just coaching. We're marketers. We're
Mhm.
we're we're counselors sometimes. Like we're all these things. We're doing automation. We're building funnels. Like we're doing all this stuff, and nobody tells
Mhm.
you that.
Yeah.
They just say, "Oh no, if you just get this mindset piece, you're good to go." Until you go out there and go, now what do I do with this mindset stuff that I know?
Yeah.
How do I put it out there? I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, being an entrepreneur now is different, right? Because there's different ways you have to market yourself and be and
So
show
yeah,
up and be
yeah,
present and be authentic and be,
yeah,
just be yourself. Because if you're trying to be, Tony Robbins, or if you're trying to be somebody else, that it's not going to land, right?
right, right,
It,
right.
you have to figure out how to be yourself and know your worth and
Yeah.
present that worth.
And I mean, Tony Robbins has been in the game for 25 years too.
Yeah.
Like,
If not longer.
people
I mean,
like,
yeah, he's been
yeah,
around forever. Yeah.
I have a lot of like purpose driven, high performing women. So lots of times they're like, oh, I've been posting for a week and I haven't gotten anything. I'm like,
A
a
week?
week? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, so
Really?
you've been posting for a week. Good for you. And I'm like, listen, I don't actually, I'm not the type of person anyway who ever believes like follows and all that kind of stuff mean anything, because they
Yeah.
don't. They actually don't. Right. A lot
Yep.
of the women that come to me are word of mouth and people who have known me for a long time. So my business is built on that. Okay. Now
Right.
I have a few thousand followers, and they're great. I love them. But the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is, it doesn't mean anything. You have to
Right.
really be able to grab their emails however you can. So build a funnel, build a PDF, build a something, where you can grab people's emails, because that's important. Email list is important because you can
Mhm.
you can constantly nurture that email list and grow it. But social media, like for instance, I had said something, I forgot what I said on Facebook. I was cut off for like a good 2-3 months. Like, so
Really?
obviously they control
Yeah.
what you can say, what you can do, it's their platforms, it's not yours. So one of the
Exactly.
biggest takeaways for anybody who's listening is build your email list however you can.
Mhm.
Whether it's you do a live event or a master class, or give away a PDF or a ebook, something. Just grab some way to get people's emails,
Mhm.
because social media, yeah, they're tricky. Like when they want to change the algorithm on you, you're done. When they don't
Yep.
like something being performed, you're done. And so yeah, an email list is something that's gold, because you can download that, put it in a Excel spreadsheet, and you'll always have that to nurture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let me just for a second. So, what would you say is the biggest challenge for your clients that come to you? What is their biggest challenge?
I think most of them is just not knowing where to start. Like,
Mm,
a lot of the women that come to me are in leadership roles or CEOs or managers, or, they're people who are already in leadership. And when they come to me with this heaviness because they want to do something more and they want to create something, but they have zero idea, like, where do I go? How do I
yeah.
start? What do I do? Because there's so much information, Sue, as you know, like, oh my gosh, I clear up at least 700 emails a day from all of the advertising emails that I get, you
Oh,
know?
I know.
And
Yeah.
so it's like they are overwhelmed. And so when they come to me, they're like, what do I do? I'm like, well, first of all, let's take a breath. You know what I'm saying? I say, because you're not a rocket scientist, are you? No. Okay. So you ain't changing the world like that. So just calm down. You know, like, cause some of them are like, I haven't been on social media that long. I can't, and they think that if they put something out immediately, 50,000 people are going to see it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you had one like, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Like, I want you to be consistent. I teach
Hmm.
these women to be very consistent because, Sue, at the end of the day, your social media platforms and your podcast are literally your portfolio. That's
Yep.
all it is. Build your portfolio, because what happens now, people are buying very differently now. So
Yeah.
if they see Sue Willoughby's coaching, right, they're going to be like, okay, so she coaches, but let me check out her Instagram and see how she is.
Yeah.
Let me check out her YouTube and see how she is. Let me check. You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
before you know it, they're checking out all of your things before they even make the first decision to hire you as their coach. Right.
Yeah. And if you're
So,
not out there in any
right,
kind of way that is meaningful and, or you're going by some weird handle like Honey Boo Boo 27,
right. Exactly.
what the heck?
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's important, just be consistent and show up, and don't worry about who's looking and who's not. I'm telling you, you only need the one. You only need that one person that needs you. Just show up for you. And I
Mhm.
mean, like, really show up for you, whether it's like a 15-second reel, whether it's a blog, whether it's a whatever it is that is your thing. Because I have like a one woman who's a big time writer. She loves to write. So she's a big writer. That's what she does. So her blogs are important to her. All right, let's do that. Let's be consistent in our blogs, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and I love that about her. And I'm like, so now I want to see your face on video. Oh my God. I'm like, we have to get you. People have to see you omnipresent.
Yeah.
At least in two platforms. You don't have to be in everywhere, but
Yeah.
let's at least do two. So let's do a blog, and you like Instagram, let's do Instagram. You know?
Mhm.
I think it's just people get overwhelmed. It's just too much information. Some people tell you got to post 50 times a day. I don't believe that's true. Post
Yeah.
once a day if you can, schedule them out if you can. Make your life easy. I even
Mhm.
have I built like I said, I built the machine, right? So I have my entire team that does all the marketing, automation, funnel building, all of that for my clients. But I also have a whole VA team, and they do all of your social media marketing,
Mm.
they do all of your editing. They do all of that kind of stuff. So I have all these teams on purpose because we need support, Sue. We need
Yeah.
support.
A
It's hard to do it alone.
solopreneur.
Yeah.
It is, because then you get
Hard.
distracted. Well, I know personally myself, right? I I'm a tech person, so
Hmm.
I will dig into the tech, and then before I know it, I'm frustrated because, if you go down one avenue of tech, then you're like, "Oh, okay, now I gotta do this other thing over
Yeah.
here, then I gotta do this other thing over here." And
Yeah.
before you know it, you got all these weird little, and you're like, "Oh my god, that was just like 2 days of," and I've not accomplished anything when I could have been doing something much more meaningful.
Right.
But
Right. No, it's true. And that happens to I mean, what you're speaking my language, right? Because I think every single coach or person listening to this podcast right now can completely relate to what you're saying.
Mhm.
Completely relate. Because unless you are at a job where you're working 9 to 5 or whatever, 9 to 9 as I call it, because it's never 9 to 5,
Right.
you are
Yeah.
you are siloed in that business. You know what you're doing, right? You know that you have to do this, data entry, you have to manage teams, whatever. When you're on your own, you find something interesting, but before you know it, you're 3 days in and none of your coaching stuff and the stuff you needed to get done got done, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge being a solopreneur, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what you just said about all of this stuff, I tend to also go for the quick gratification, right? The instant
Yeah.
gratification, like, well, I can do
100%.
these 25 tasks. And then it was like, well, but those 25 tasks did not help you. As some people will say, like, make the boat go faster
Right,
or right.
right. It's so true. It's you have to prioritize your day, and it's another challenge, right? Because you
Yeah.
get up already with things on the mind of what you want to
Mhm,
do. So what I try to do to circumvent that is at night I really think about what my goal for the day is. Because Sue, we're not
mm,
promised tomorrow. We're not. A lot
mm-mm,
of people made plans for today and didn't come today, didn't make it today, right?
mhm,
And so I try to be very, very strategic about that. So at night, I try to really think about what is it that I want to accomplish tomorrow? Okay, I want to make sure my funnel's running right. Okay, so here's the three things I got to do for my funnel to run right tomorrow.
mhm,
And that's like the first thing I hit. And I really get intentional. So I set my timer for 25 to 35 minutes.
mm,
And I only
mm,
work on that for 25 to 35 minutes with no interruptions. Like that's the only thing I work on. And the reason I do that is because I have ADHD. And if
mhm.
I don't do that, I have 50 tabs in front of me open. All of them sound great. I'm going to be the next speaker, the next coach, the next this, the next speaker, the
Oh
next,
my God.
blah, 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 you know?
I'm sorry, I don't
And
mean to laugh, but I was
no.
just like, that's totally. I got this thing. So for those of you who are watching, it's like an hourglass thing, right? And it's got 30 minutes of sand in it.
Oh, that's
You
cool.
flip it over, and then you just do that task, or you do like little sprints
Yes.
because, and then here's the thing. I realize when I do that, it's like this physical representation, right? I've
Yeah.
flipped that thing over. I can see the sand running.
Yeah.
And then I get so involved in what I'm doing, the thing that I'm actually supposed to be doing that will make the boat go faster or whatever. And before I know it, I'm like, oh man, the sand is gone. I probably
So
went through
good,
like,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I
So
can
good.
focus because
Yeah.
I think I probably have undiagnosed ADHD. I'm pretty sure I do. But having that thing and just going, oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's
can
so
actually
good.
focus and get something done. Yeah,
Yeah.
having that
And
physical
then it
thing.
feels good. You feel like,
Yeah.
okay, okay,
I
okay,
yeah.
I got it. Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Right.
I love it. I love it. And then I do that for at least 4 times. So I try to do it 4 times,
Mhm.
25 minutes. I take a minute break, run to the bathroom, get some coffee, whatever, come
Yep.
back, set the timer 25 minutes, do that second task, unless it's the same one that I just,
Mhm.
have to finish. And I do that 4 times. And after my fourth time, then I take a 30-minute break. Because if I don't, my brain gets fatigued, so
Yeah,
I have to like take
absolutely.
that break.
Yeah.
But that's how I do it. It's a Pomodoro technique, right? And
Yeah.
so it's helped me get through a lot of really great things in my life. And the hardest part is actually shutting everything down that is not related to that task. That
Yep.
is the hardest. I
Mhm.
turn off my phone, I turn off my notifications, I turn off everything. And that's the hardest part because my habit is to pick up the phone to check, pick up the phone to check,
Yeah.
you know?
Or it
Yeah. It's
vibrates. If it's sitting on
discipline.
the desk,
Yeah.
it'll even if you've
It
got it on,
discipline.
it'll still vibrate or do something, and you're like, "What am I missing?"
Right.
Yeah, a little
Right.
FOMO action going on
And then
there.
it's nothing. It's
Yeah,
nothing. Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's somebody wanting something from me that I don't
Yeah.
wanna give them." Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Oh my God. So much good stuff in this podcast. I feel like, you just laid out your whole business model for us. That was just like,
Why
okay, well,
not?
we don't, but no, I mean, I love that. Thank you for being so generous with all of your information and your
Absolutely.
energy and your just authenticity
I
is
appreciate
really
that.
so wonderful. What would you like to? One final thing. How can people get in touch with you? Um, so
Yeah.
one parting thought, and how can people get in touch with you? All of my budding
You
entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah, listen, you're only in competition with you, okay? So stop looking at all these one-shot deals on social media. The truth of the matter is they're taking a great picture, and I'm sure you've taken great pictures too, and then they're putting it up as if it is their life. Now, I will tell you, through experience and being in big masterminds that some of these people who have claimed to be 7, 8, 9 figure earners end up going on these big masterminds and talking about how they're making no money. But online, they look phenomenal, right? So I will tell you to please stop doing that. Stop comparing yourself to anybody but you. Are you better today than you were yesterday? For real. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Now, if you are in the same place you were yesterday, switch that up. You got to do one thing that tomorrow is going to be better than today. Switch it up. I don't care what that is. Focus on something. It could be going for that walk. It could be whatever. That one thing that you need to do to up your game for you. Because at the end of the day, somebody out there is looking at you, wishing they had what you had. And you're busy looking at somebody else, hoping that you had what they had. Just stick to it. Don't give up. And don't give up until you actually have accomplished the goal that you want to do. Like, it might look different, but don't just give up because it's been a week and you only got one like. Like, that's ridiculous. Okay. So please, 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 I couldn't stress that enough, to please be only in competition with you and no one else. Okay. That's my one thing. And then for getting in contact with me, it's very easy. It's either Straight Talk, No Sugar Added, or Neena Perez, and that's anywhere on the planet. So you can just look up Neena Perez, Neena Perez, and you'll find me on all the social media handles, website, the whole thing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your energy and everything that you brought to the show. Thank you so much, Neena. And if this podcast has been beneficial to you, and I am pretty sure that it has, please share it with someone. Give us a rating and a review, and that's how we stay. That's how we stay afloat as podcasters. Yeah. So, if this has been valuable, please share it with a friend. And thank you for showing up today. And I will see you next week. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Life Worth Being. I hope you found it fun and inspiring. And to avoid a bad case of FOMO, please be sure to click that subscribe button. If you love what you heard today, please share it with a friend and then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform and return the love with a wonderful review and 5-star rating. It would truly mean the world to me. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and on my website. Links below in the show notes. I appreciate you, and I will see you next week for more fresh insights on awakening a life worth being.